In this video, I'm building this oak bread bin. It's a simple idea, but with some proper joinery and a few details to make it special. Let's go. I started this one while visiting my parents, where most of my bigger tools still live. That worked out well, because I wanted to build it from oak, and had some leftover chunks from old projects that I could mill down. So I planed everything flat and square, then headed to the table saw to rip it into strips. I'm still a bit scared of the table saw, which I think is fair given it could take my fingers off. I hadn't used it in a while either, so I was extra careful here. The reason for this project is my housemate Jack. He's recently got really into baking. There's always baguettes, sourdough, or something else delicious on the go, and we needed somewhere better to keep it all than Tupperware. Once the wood was flat and to thickness, I glued it into panels. What I didn't know when I started was that all my long clamps had been borrowed, so I had to improvise. I cut an extra piece diagonally to make 2 trapeziums, and laid them out with the panels, between bits of wood that screwed into the bench. I did all the panels in one go, leaving the sides in between without glue. Hammering one end of the trapeziums pushed their thicker ends together, clamping the panels tight. This was a surprisingly effective substitute for the missing clamps. One of the panels got cut in half to make up the sides. My circular saw was back at home, so I did this with a handsaw. It's quite nice doing things by hand again, but it does slow you down. I did have this little palm router, and it got a lot of use. First to get straight edges on the panels, with a flush cut bit and a straight edge. This tidied up around the glue joints and my slightly wonky hand cuts. Here I'm starting off some dovetails to hold the sides to the bottom panel. I'm still practicing my skills for precise joints like this, but I was quite happy with how these turned out. They're not perfect by any means, but my best yet. Back with the router, I added grooves for the back panel to sit in, then rabbited the panel so it would slot neatly into place. For the door, I wanted to be able to see all of Jack's bread, so it's more of a little window on a hinge, and windows need frames. Another good excuse for some joinery practice. I came up with a joint I was quite proud of. I know I didn't invent it, but it's new to me. It's a cross between a mitre and a half lap, so it looks clean from the front, but gives more gluing surface, and is much easier to clamp. With all 4 sides cut, I used a biscuit cutting router bit to make a groove for a sheet of clear acrylic to sit in. I measured out the acrylic and tried to score and snap it, but either something was wrong with my technique, or this is just the world's strongest 3mm sheet of plastic. Eventually I gave up and grabbed a hacksaw. I didn't want any visible hinges, so I used short dowels as pins in the top corners. The panels are very thin, so I was careful not to drill all the way through, and I drilled matching holes in the door. I had planned to make a wooden knob for the door, but found this smart looking handle in one of my boxes, and it fit perfectly, so I went with that instead. Back home and reunited with my power tools, I worked through the grits until everything felt smooth, then brought it inside for a glue up. Because of the pin style hinges, everything had to come together in one go, so I laid it all out carefully first. The dovetails helped hold it together while I sorted out the clamps. The back panel dropped nicely into the groove. I didn't use any glue here to allow for wood movement. These washers act as spacers around the dowel pins to keep an even gap around the door. With the top on, it was a bit of a wrestle with the few clamps I had, but everything came out square and solid. It was definitely one of my more successful glue-ups. Better than when I glued a tabletop outside in the cold and it all fell apart the next day at least. All good learning experience, I suppose. After that, I cleaned up the joints with a sander and softened the edges by hand. Then a few coats of food-safe tung oil, inside and out, brought out the rich golden colour in the oak. This is always one of my favourite parts of any project. Finally, the handle screwed on, and that was it. It lives here on this floating shelf in our kitchen. The day after I finished, Jack was back baking again. I really enjoyed this build. It was challenging at times, but it was always fun figuring out the creative solutions to those problems. And now we've got somewhere proper to keep all of Jack's bread, which makes the kitchen feel a bit like our own little bakery. At the end of the day, it is just a bread bin, but I think it's one of my favourite things I've made. If you haven't seen it yet, check out my last video where I helped my brother build an outdoor kitchen and renovate his shed. That's it for this one. See you next time.